I was holding the phone, about to ask Max when the wedding would be, when Lena looked straight into my eyes and smiled like someone sliding a knife between ribs. "We already got married yesterday," she said, voice light, almost sing-song. "We only invited special people." The room tilted. Special people. Not the woman who had paid their $500 rent every month for 3 years. Not the woman who bought their couch, the very one Lena now sprawled across, their bed, their plates, their food. Not the woman who had starved her own pantry so theirs stayed full. I stood in my own living room, clutching a phone that suddenly felt made of lead, watching my son study the floor like it might open and swallow him whole. In my closet hung the pale pink dress I'd never wear, the new shoes still in their box, the fantasy that I would stand beside my only child on the most important day of his life. $200 on the dress alone, because I wanted to look nice in photographs I was never meant to be in. Max finally spoke, rehearsed and thin. "It was small, Mom. Just us and the witnesses." I didn't answer. I already knew it was a lie. I'd seen the pictures an hour earlier. Lena's parents beaming, her siblings raising champagne, her white dress, bought partly with the $800 I'd sent last month for whatever you need. Everyone looked radiant. Everyone, except the person who'd paid for half of it. A week later, the phone rang. Lena's voice had lost its smug music. Now it quivered on the edge of panic. "Renate, the rent is overdue. The landlord's threatening eviction. You forgot the transfer." I let the silence stretch until I could hear her breathing hitch. "Lena," I said, calm as winter glass, "I only help special people." The line went so quiet I thought she'd hung up. Then a small, stunned, "What?" "You heard me." She tried every note she owned. Confusion, tears, the old syrupy, "You're like a second mom to me." I listened the way you listen to rain on a roof you no longer have to fix. When I hung up, I sat on my bed and calculated exactly how much of my life I had poured into them. Rent, 36 times $500 equals $18,000. Groceries and emergencies, approximately $7,200. Furniture, gifts, car loan they never repaid, air conditioner repair, Lena's medical emergencies, wedding dress contributions, another $8,200. Total, $33,400. $33,400 drained from my late husband's careful savings, from the pension I earned scrubbing floors and folding other people's laundry, from the small fund meant to keep me safe in old age. All of it traded for the privilege of being invisible. That night I cried, but the tears tasted different, metallic, electric. Anger, not grief. The next morning I woke up a different woman. I made coffee for one. I did not check my phone for apologies that would never come. I sat at the kitchen table where I used to count money for them and instead counted it for myself. The phone rang. Max, Lena, Max again. I let it ring until the sound felt like someone else's problem. At the bank, I canceled every automatic transfer. Mr. Klein, the branch manager who had watched my balance bleed out month after month, looked almost relieved when I told him why. When I got home, 3 cars sat in my driveway. Through the window, I could see movement inside my house. They had used the spare key I'd given them in case of emergencies. I walked in to find Max hunched on my couch, Lena pacing, and a man I didn't know rifling through my personal papers on the dining table. "What is this?" I asked. My voice did not shake. Lena spun around, eyes wild. "Renee, thank God, we need to talk." "No, you need to listen. Take your hands off my things, take your wife, your friend, whatever he is, and get out of my house." The cars kept circling like sharks that had scented blood, but hadn't decided where to bite. I watched them on the little monitor Ethan had installed above my kitchen counter. Max's silver sedan, Lena's white hatchback with the dented fender I'd paid to fix twice, sometimes both at once. They never honked, never waved. They just drifted past, slow as funeral processions. I logged every pass. 12 October, 9:14 a.m., Max alone. 12 October, 3:27 p.m., Lena and an unknown woman in the passenger seat. 13th October, 7:05 p.m., both cars, parked across the street for 11 minutes, lights off. Mr. Weber said the log was gold. He told me, harassment doesn't have to be loud to be illegal. It just has to be persistent. On the 15th of October, the persistence stopped. At 6:42 a.m., my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in years. Max's old childhood phone, the one I'd bought him when he turned 13. I almost didn't answer. Curiosity won. It was Max, but the voice was different. Quiet, almost careful. Mom, can we talk? Just talk. No yelling, no lawyers. Please. Something in his tone made the hairs on my arms rise. Not fear. Recognition. This was the little boy voice. He knew he had broken something precious and was hoping love would fix it anyway. I said nothing for a long second. "I'll be at the diner on Maple," I said finally. 10 o'clock. You come alone. I hung up before he could negotiate. I arrived early, took the corner booth that faced the door, and ordered coffee I didn't intend to drink. At 9:58, the bell above the door jingled, and Max walked in wearing the same gray hoodie he'd had since college. He looked thinner. His eyes were red-rimmed. He slid into the booth opposite me like he was afraid the seat might burn him. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Max." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I'm sorry," he said at last, the words scraping out. "I know that probably doesn't mean anything to you right now, but I am. I've been sorry for weeks. I just didn't know how to say it without sounding like I was asking for something." I waited. I had learned the power of silence. He rubbed his palms on his jeans. "Lena's pregnant." The words hit the table between us like a glass dropped in slow motion. 8 weeks, he went on, voice cracking. "We found out the day after you threw the lawyer's papers in the trash. She didn't want me to tell you. Said you'd use it. Said you'd think it was another trick." He gave a broken laugh. Maybe she was right. Everything feels like a trick lately. I stared at him. My son. 35 years old and still capable of surprising me. He kept talking, faster now, as if afraid I'd stand up and leave. "We're scared, Mom. We're so far behind on everything. The landlord served us papers yesterday. Actual eviction notice. Lena's been crying nonstop. I took extra shifts driving nights, but it's not enough. And I keep thinking, this is my fault. I let it get this bad. I let her talk me into the secret wedding because she said big weddings were stressful and wasteful. And then she spent the money you gave us on that dress and the photographer anyway. I let her convince you you'd always be there to catch us, so why not live a little bigger? I was lazy and cruel. And I hate the person I turned into." He stopped, breathing hard, eyes shining. "I don't want money," he said very clearly. "I came to ask if you would consider being in our lives again. Not as a bank, as my mom, as the baby's grandmother. If we've burned that bridge forever, I understand. I just needed you to hear it from me and not from some lawyer or screaming match in your driveway." The waitress refilled my coffee. I hadn't touched the first cup. I thought of the pale pink dress I'd cut into cleaning rags. I thought of the $33,400. I thought of the eviction notice he was carrying in his pocket like a death sentence. I thought of a new life growing inside a woman who had once smiled while telling me I wasn't special. And then I thought of Eleanor's daughter, who had needed 6 hard months to remember her mother was a human being. I folded my hands on the table. "Max," I said, "I'm going to make this very simple. I love you. That hasn't changed, and it never will. But love is not a blank check, and it is no longer a one-way street. If you and Lena want a relationship with me, these are the new rules, and they are not negotiable. You will get professional financial counseling together and show me the plan you create. I will not hand over another dime until I see it in writing and believe it's realistic. Lena will call me herself. No more hiding behind you. And apologize for the wedding and for every time she treated me like a resource instead of a person. Words only. No tears, no excuses. You will both attend at least 3 sessions with a family therapist. I will pay for those 3 sessions. After that, you're on your own. If any of this feels too hard, you walk away now and we remain polite strangers. I will not chase you. I will not rescue you. I have already buried one husband. I refuse to bury my self-respect. He sat very still, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. That's fair, he whispered. More than fair. It's not generosity, I corrected gently. It's boundaries. There's a difference. He nodded, swallowing hard. I'll tell Lena tonight. Whatever she decides, I'll let you know. He started to stand, then stopped. Mom, the baby, if we do this, if we earn our way back, would you want to be part of its life? I felt something crack open inside my chest, something I thought had sealed shut forever. Yes, I said, and my voice was steady. I would like that very much. But only if its parents learn that love and money are not the same currency. He left the diner without trying to hug me. I think he understood that some things have to be earned back, one careful inch at a time. 3 nights later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a simple photograph. An ultrasound image. Grainy, black and white. Below it, 3 words from Lena.
I'm ready to talk. When works for you. I stared at the tiny bean-shaped shadow that would one day call me Grandma, and for the first time in months I cried the old kind of tears, quiet, warm, and unafraid. Healing, I was learning, is not the same as forgetting. It's deciding what you're willing to carry forward, and what you finally, mercifully, put down. The courtroom smelled of old wood and disinfectant. I walked in with my head high, black suit pressed, hair freshly done by Cynthia the night before. Mr. Weber was at my side. Behind us sat Eleanor, Maria, Carmen, Alfreda, and even Mr. Summer from the hardware store, every seat filled with people who had watched me become myself again. Across the aisle sat Max and Lena. Max looked like he hadn't slept in days. Lena's face was puffy, her hand resting protectively on the small curve of her belly. For one heartbeat I felt something soften inside me, until I remembered that same hand had signed the petition calling me confused, paranoid, and a danger to herself. The judge, a woman with steel-gray hair and no patience for theater, called the case. Their lawyer, not Mr. Fisher this time, a more expensive one, began with the performance I had expected, tearful statements about my sudden personality change, the alarming security cameras, my refusal of psychiatric care, the unpaid medical bills that didn't exist, the pharmacist who had been misled, the neighbor who simply disliked me. Then he called Lena to the stand. She cried prettily. She spoke of her terror that I was sliding into dementia, how I had cut them off without warning, how the stress might harm her unborn baby. She used the word, confused, 7 times. Each time, the word landed like a slap. When Mr. Weber rose for cross-examination, the room grew very quiet. Mrs. Kessler, he began, voice calm. You are currently $8,000 behind on rent, correct? Lena blinked. We've had some setbacks. And your credit card balance is over $12,000, most of it incurred after my client stopped paying your bills? Objection. Relevance. Sustained. Mr. Weber didn't miss a beat. He moved on to the wedding photos, blown up and projected on the screen behind her Lena in her white dress, her parents, her siblings, champagne flowing. Mrs. Kessler, can you point to my client in any of these photographs? Lena's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. That's correct, Mr. Weber said gently. She wasn't invited. Yet she helped pay for the dress you're wearing in this picture. Is that accurate? A long silence. Yes, Lena finally whispered. Max took the stand next. He couldn't look at me. Mr. Weber asked him only 4 questions. Mr. Richter, when was the last time you telephoned your mother simply to ask how she was, not to request money? Max's answer was barely audible. I don't remember. When was the last time you visited her home without discussing finances? Another silence. In the past 3 years, have you ever repaid a single dollar of the $33,400 you and your wife accepted from her? Max's head dropped. No, sir. Thank you. No further questions. Then it was our turn. Dr. Moore took the stand and demolished every claim of cognitive decline in plain, precise language. My perfect scores on every memory and reasoning test were entered into evidence. My bank statements, balanced to the penny, my grocery receipts, my garden club photos, the log of Max and Lena's drive-bys, all of it laid out in neat, damning rows. Eleanor spoke about the coffee on the porch the day after the break-in. How calm and clear I had been. Cynthia described the woman who walked into her salon after years away and said, "Today I'm spending money on me." Alfreda, 80 years old and fierce as winter, looked straight at the judge and said, "I've seen a lot of greedy children in my life, Your Honor. This is one of the worst." I was last. The judge asked me to take the stand. She did not smile, but her eyes were not unkind. Mrs. Richter, in your own words, why did you stop supporting your son and daughter-in-law financially? I folded my hands and looked directly at Max and Lena, not with hatred, just with the exhausted clarity of someone who has finally seen the truth. Because I realized that everything I thought was love was actually commerce. I paid for attention, for invitations, for the illusion that I mattered to them. When I stopped paying, the invitations stopped. The concern appeared only when the money did. I am 71 years old. I raised my son alone after my husband died. I worked, I saved, I sacrificed. I will not spend the last chapter of my life purchasing counterfeit love. I choose dignity over delusion. That is all. I stepped down. The judge did not deliberate long. After reviewing the evidence and testimony, she said, "This court finds no credible indication that Mrs. Renata Richter suffers from any impairment that would prevent her from managing her own affairs. The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, the pattern of financial exploitation and attempted coercion is deeply troubling. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Elder Abuse Unit for investigation." Case dismissed. The gavel fell like a door slamming on a decade of my life. Max stood up as if to speak to me. I met his eyes once, long enough for him to see there was nothing left there for him to take, and walked out between my friends. Outside in the corridor, Eleanor handed me a single red rose. "Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life, Renata." I took the rose, breathed in its scent, and for the first time in years I did not think about what anyone else needed from me. I only thought about where I might plant it when I got home. The gavel came down like the closing of a very long, very heavy book. Judge Miller's words still rang in the hallway long after he had left the bench. Petition denied with prejudice. Matter referred to the district attorney for investigation of suspected elder financial abuse. Court is adjourned. I did not cheer. I simply exhaled, a breath I had been holding for years. Max tried to catch my arm as we filed out. "Mom." I looked at his hand on my sleeve the way you might look at a stranger's. He let go. Lena was already halfway down the corridor, heels clicking like gunshots, one palm cradling the small swell beneath her black dress. She never turned around. Outside, the November air tasted metallic and clean. Eleanor pressed a warm paper cup of coffee into my hands. Someone, I think it was Alfreda, slipped a red rose into my coat pocket. Nobody spoke for a long time. We didn't need to. The silence was the kind that comes after a war when the guns finally stop. 3 months later I sold the house on Maple Street. The young couple who bought it had 2 little boys and eyes full of plans. I wished them well and meant it. Some homes need new stories. I kept only what fit into 2 suitcases and a portfolio of the watercolors I had started painting again. The rest I gave away. The pale pink dress became quilt squares for a women's shelter. The furniture went to families starting over. Half my savings went to an organization that defends elders from exactly the kind of siege I had survived. With what remained, I bought a light-filled apartment on the top floor of an old building near the river. The first morning I woke there. Sunlight poured across the hardwood, and I laughed out loud for no reason except that the day belonged entirely to me. I traveled. Positano in spring, where I painted the sea until my fingers smelled of salt and turpentine. Prague in winter, where I walked the Charles Bridge at dawn with frost in my hair and no one waiting for a transfer notice. A small village in Provence, where I learned to make bread with a woman my age who had also, decades earlier, closed the door on ungrateful children. I never heard from Max or Lena again. Rumor reached me once. Eviction avoided by the skin of their teeth. Lena working retail, Max driving nights. I felt no triumph. Only a quiet sorrow for the boy he had been and the man he had chosen not to become. The baby, my grandchild, was born in April. I know this only because the hospital birth announcements are public. I sent nothing. Some absences are the last gift a person can give. Some evenings I sit on my balcony with a glass of wine and watch the river catch the last light. 72 years old, lighter than I have ever been. The wrinkles on my hands tell honest stories now, not ones written by someone else's greed. I have learned a late but durable truth. Love that must be purchased is not love. Freedom that must be fought for is the only freedom worth having. My name is Renata Richter. I am no one's bank. I am no one's burden. I am, at long last, my own.